Be a good mashup.
I'm so sorry for your loss.
Needs more sheer. Don't let the sun go down on me. Mashup.
Right. And then brought in, well, they go out for a section of Ricardo D. Again, that's not a mean hug that we necessarily practice. No, we don't practice it necessarily here.
So just so you know, guys,
It's not something we. Okay.
we're gonna do that instrumental rock break
Oh, okay.
from 25.
Okay, so you can maybe.
We're gonna repeat a section here. 25.
Yeah.
Okay.
Who did you lose? Oh, wow. Hopefully, yeah. It's a very, and I apologize, it's a lively service, you know, so, but, you know, like your morning. Yeah. Yeah, okay. Oh, wow. Right. That's the spectrum. Okay.
Yes. And you got nothing.
Wow. So you get the gamut, they're seeing it all. All right.
I'll send it with my chicken scratch.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else?
No, we're good.
So that makes sense in the Oseh Shalom, yeah? Like a little more, and then we'll rock it out a bit. Like
Yeah, I'm gonna start lighter and lower, like, you know, so that it's a moment when you do it. And I think it's stylistically kind of like that.
Yeah.
70s.
Yeah. Whatever it is. Yeah. All right.
There's more shears been cut. Thank you very much for letting me know. What was the one you're gonna take that drum solo? It was Roll Into Dark, right? Is that the one you're gonna do? Oh no, that's the one we're gonna do. What's the one you're gonna do that drum intro on? Oh, it was the Kabbalat beat. Don't. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. David, speaking of tomorrow, there's no Baruch tomorrow. I thought it was a test. Yeah, but I'm wondering.
I want to end with the high holiday on Adonai, which is
Oh, I want to make sure. That's the Ana Adonai. I think I have it. So that's the so Baruch Abba is gone. I put it in just in case. And it's this Ana Adonai. Which one is it? Okay, I'll take it. Okay. I don't want to peek too soon.
it's called Let's do some free music. Let's do some free music.
Oh, this is the thing?
Cantor.
So, two
Free
things.
Cybus music. The free Cybus music.
I'm cutting Mismor here. Okay, so we're going you want me to introduce what I would really love to have one other thing. So the Yom Kippur Niyun that we start with. So maybe should I say a word about it?
I'll say it as I intro.
Just say that Niyun is easy for them.
Shabbat Shalom. It is such a pleasure to see those of you who are here with us tonight and to welcome those of you who are with us online. I'm Rabbi Samuel Kay. I'm joined by our cantor, David Rosen. That beautiful nigun we just heard is the nigun that we will be singing all month long to bring in that spirit of the Chagim, of the high holidays, of the Amim Noraim. So if you didn't catch it tonight, I promise you, keep coming. You'll hear it more, and you'll catch it eventually soon. Cantor, would you like to introduce our amazing musical accompanist tonight?
I would. Jason Jestad, our musician in residence. Of course,
Paul Ormandy on percussion, and Shelley Miller on bass. We are grateful to them in helping to make our worship tonight, so thank you.
Thank you. Tonight, as we begin, I wanted to share a prayer from Alden Solovey that brings us into this feeling of the High Holy Days and brings us into the feeling of this musical Shabbat that we are about to experience together. It is entitled, "We Are Music." Quiet now. Listen, breathe, and listen. You are music, your breath and hands, your smile and tears, your eyes and pulse are notes that dance in the space between us. And we are music, a symphony conducted by the very rhythm of life, by God's own hand, by our choices we make day by day. And our notes play on, separately and together, that sacred sound of living, the music waltzes, the making melodies that are fresh and new and that are never heard again. The bass line that pulses from our hearts to the soul of the universe. And joy bends sorrow, sorrow bends hope, hope bends grief, grief bends love, love bends joy. So be quiet now and listen and breathe and listen, because the silence is your longing and the silence is your yearning for a new song. The music of your will blocks your heart to the harmonies. It is already dancing around you to the chorus that is already singing for you. Oh, you hidden delight of heaven. Oh, you secret gift of God. We are music, and we are music, for the music plays through us.
Amen.
Cantor.
Yedid Nefesh, page 105.
Yedid Nefesh av Rachaman B'shor Chavdav Eretz Undav Yiharutz Avdav Kemo Haya Yishtachaveh Vatach Anna Elokna Refana Allah Becharona Noam Sivach Az Titchazek Vetitrapel Vechayatarach Shivchat Olam Yai Lai Lai Yai Lai Lai Yai Lai
My pleasure to invite anyone who would like to come up and light these Shabbat lights with us as we prepare to welcome in the light of Shabbat. I'm looking for our family who we're honoring this evening, but I think traffic has gotten the better of them. So Rabbi McCarroll, could I call on you to light the lights of our congregation for us alongside our members over here?
My prayer, I sing to you. Be gracious to the ones I love, and bless them with goodness and mercy and peace. Oh, hear my prayer to you. Let us light these lights and see the way to you, and let us say Amen. Let us us light these lights and see the way to you, and let us say Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. Gadol Adonai umelech gadol al kol Elohim ki el gadol Adonai umelech gadol al kol Bitoda Bizmirot Nariano. We continue to welcome in Shabbat with joy and with song Zamru Ladonai, middle of page 111 from Psalm 98. Zamru Ladonai Zamru Ladonai Bechino Zamru Ladonai Bechino Vekol Zimra Yai Lai 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 Ya la la ya la 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 ya la 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 Bechatzot rol bechol shofar harichu lifnei hamelech Adonai harichu lifnei hamelech ram hayam umlo tevel ויושבבה נחרות ימחך וכף יחר הרים ירננו נחרות ימחך וכף יחר הרים ירננו יאי לי לי לפני אדוני קיווה לשפוט הארץ ישפוט תבל בצדק וימים במישרים ישפוט תבל בצדק וימים במישרים יאי לי לי
We turn to page 115 for the words of Lecha Dodi as we welcome in the Sabbath bride with verses 1, 2, 5, and 9. And at that ninth verse, I invite you to stand and turn and face the door as we welcome in the Shabbat queen, the Sabbath bride. There is a moment that we are coming up to. We are not quite there yet. We are less than 24 hours away from it. In fact, this idea that, quote unquote, the king is in the field, this idea that the Malchut, the royal essence of God is descending into the world. And so as we reach that moment, that idea of Shabbat queen, of this special moment of Lecha Dodi, the Shabbat bride, becomes even more important as we reach Elul. Page 115. Shabbat nekapela Adoti likrat kala bene Shabbat nekapela Adoti likrat kala bene Shabbat לקבלה שהמור וזכור מריבורך השמיענו אל המיוחד אדוני אחד ושמו אחד ושמו תפארת ולי תהילה לך דודי לקראת כלה פני שבת לקבלה לך לקראת כלה, פני שבת, לקבלה, לקראת שבת, לכל במרחב, כי אם בקורחה ברחבה, בראש מכרם נסוכה, סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה, לקראת אותי, לקראת כלה, פני שבת, לקבלה לך דודי לקראת כלה פני שבת לקבלה התעוררי התעוררי כי באורך קומי אורי 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 אשר דברי כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה לך לקראת כלה, פני שבת, לקבלה לך דודי, לקראת כלה, פני
בשלום עטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצולתו אמוני עם סגולה. בואי חלה לך דודי לקראת קהלה בני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת קהלה בני שבת נקבלה. יא אלה 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 יא אלה לה 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 אלה 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 יא אלה לה 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 אלה 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 יא אלה לה 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 לה
That was great, Cantor.
That was fun.
Yeah.
I think we're ready to pray.
I feel warmed up.
I think we're warmed up. All right.
I feel
We
the
should pray.
spirit. I feel the energy.
Let us rise for Baruch Hu together, page 119. Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 la. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach, HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. HaMevorach, HaMevorach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim, v'chochma poteach she'arim, u'vitvuna mishane itim, u'machalif et hazmanim, u'mesader et hakochavim, b'mishmerotehem b'rakia kirtzono, borei yom v'layla, golel or mipnei choshech, v'choshech mipnei or, u'ma'avir yom u'vei u'mavdil bein yom u'vein layla, Adonai tzavaot shemo, El Chai v'Kayam Tamid Yimloch Aleinu Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai HaMa'ariv Aravim. We read together, Unending love have you shown your people, the house of Israel. Torah and mitzvot, laws and precepts have you taught us. And therefore, Adonai our God, when we lie down and when we rise up, we will reflect on the meaning of your laws and rejoice in the words of your Torah and in your mitzvot forever. For they are our life and the length of our days. On them we will meditate day and night. May your love never depart from us. Praised are you, Adonai, who loves your people, Israel.
כי הם חיינו ויורך ימינו והם נגי יומם בלילה ואהבתך לתסיר ממנו לעולמים ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל שמע ישראל Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem, Kevod Malchuto, Leolam Va'ed. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ושוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם להיות על ידיך, והיו לדודפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
All this we hold to be true and sure. You alone are our God, and there is none else. We are Israel, your people. You are our sovereign. You deliver us from the hands of oppressors and save us from the fists of tyrants. You do wonders without number, marvels that surpass our understanding. You give us our life, and by your help we survive all who would seek our destruction. You did wonders for us in the land of Egypt, miracles and marvels in the land of Pharaoh. You led your people Israel out forever to serve you in freedom. And when your children witnessed your power, they extolled you and gave you thanks. Willingly they enthroned you, and full of joy, Moses, Miriam, and all Israel sang this song.
Adonai, Himlo, Leolam, Vaed, Adonai, Himlo, Leolam, Vaed, Michamocha, Vaelim Adonai, Vikamocha, Netar Bakodesh, Kifada Adonai et Yaakov, uga'alo miad chazak mimenu, Baruch atah Adonai, Ga'al Israel.
Grant that we lie down in peace, Adonai our God, and raise us up, O sovereign, to life renewed. Spread over us the shelter of your peace, and guide us with your good counsel, and for your name's sake, be our help. Shield us from hatred and plague. Keep us from war and famine and anguish. Subdue our inclination to evil. O God, our guardian and helper, our gracious and merciful sovereign, give us refuge in the shadow of your wings. Guard our coming and our going, that now and always we may have life and peace. Praised are you, Adonai, whose shelter of peace is spread over us, over all your people Israel, and over Jerusalem.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדור תחרית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדור תחרית עולם. ביני ובן בני ישראל, בני ישראל אותי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לתורתם ברית עולם וביום השביעי שבת וינפש שבת וינפש שבת וינפש ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לתורתם ברית עולם יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה יעלמד יברך חירותי וימליך מלכותי בחייכון וביומכון ובחי לכל בית ישראל בעגלה ובזמן קריב יאמרו אמן יהי שמי רבה מברך לעלם ועלמי עלמיה יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי קודשם בריחו ליהלה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן מעלמה ויאמרו אדוני שפתי תפתח ופי יגיד תהילתך ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו אלוהי אברהם אלוהי יצחק ואלוהי יעקב אלוהי שרה אלוהי רבקה אלוהי רחל ואלוהי לאה האל הגדול הגבור והנורא אל עליון גומל חסדים טובים וקונה הכל וזוכר חסדי אבות ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם למען שמו באהבה מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן ברוך אתה אדוני מגן אברהם ופוקד שרה אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני מחיי מתים אתה רב להושיע מוריד הטל מכלכל חיים בחסר מחיי מתים מרחמים רבים סומך נופלים ורופא חולים ומתיר אסורים ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומדומה לך מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישוע ונאמן אתה להחיות מתים ברוך אתה אדוני מחיה המתים אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה ברוך אתה אדוני האל HaKadosh.
We continue with silent prayer and reflection, both the words of our prayer book and the private words of our hearts.
עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל.
With those words of peace and healing still tingling in the air, we turn our hearts towards our Mishaberach, our prayer for healing. And as a Canadian community, we are engaged in the act of healing through the acts of truth and reconciliation, a process that we know will take both time and continued efforts, and it is a call that becomes even more deeply personal to us as this Jewish community begins the month of Elul. As a community, we acknowledge the lands on which we live and the people who were here, living and caring for this land and its inhabitants before us. Our sacred spaces are hosted on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Haudenosaunee, the Ojibwa, Chippewa, and the Wendat peoples. And this land is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people from across Turtle Island. While Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit, we acknowledge that not all treaties are made with fairness in mind for each party. We are grateful to gather on this land. We are grateful to strengthen our community, and we are committed to heeding the 94 calls to action, especially the 60th call, which asks leaders of all faiths to develop and teach curriculums which hold respect for Indigenous spirituality, so that we may be a part of the healing that will take place in our greater Canadian community. Our prayer for healing includes now the names of the following members of Holy Blossom Temple: Johanna Falk, Chana bat Gittel, Sarah Leah bat Moshe Meir ben Naomi, Miriam bat Benjamin v'Sarah Leah, Joel Sears, Gittel Yaakova bat Shmuel v'Sarah, Moshe Gershon ben Baruch Shalom Chaim v'Rachel Leah, Rivka bat Chana, and Moshe Eliyahu ben Yonah uPesach. If you are praying for someone's healing tonight, healing of body, mind, or spirit, I invite you to share their name at this time so that we may join our prayers to yours.
הברכה לאבותינו. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shelema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. Misherera avotenu, mikorach habracha lehimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen.
I just spent a week at Camp George. It is so lovely to be back here, but it's even more lovely to hear the sounds of young people in our Mishkan, especially to the crowd over here, who I saw getting very excited. And you should never be ashamed to be excited in prayer. So next time you hear those tunes that are familiar to you, don't silent go, woo! You should shout it out with full spirits and a lot of kavanah, because that's the sound of life in our sanctuary. That's the sound of life in our synagogue, and it should never be something that we silence. Let me ask you all a question. When do the high holidays begin? It's not meant to be a trick question, by the way. It's just a tricky one. As I mentioned a few weeks ago, some rabbis and scholars believe that Tisha B'Av is the start of the high holidays, that the grand tochacha, the rebuke that we receive as a Jewish people, is the ringing alarm clock of the soul, which alerts us that it is time to wake up. Others say that tonight or tomorrow morning, as we observe Rosh Chodesh Elul with special prayers and recitations, that is the real moment when the holy season begins. That the recitation of Hallel for Elul is the moment when we should really start to prepare ourselves for the high holidays. Elul is a funny month in that it has an extra day of Rosh Chodesh, which is to say that there are 2 days that we observe as the first day of the month. Wrap your head around that for a moment if you can. And one has to split the hair even more finely here because, well, we blow the shofar on every single day of Elul as part of that grand alarm clock of waking us up. We don't do it on Shabbat. And since tomorrow is Rosh Chodesh Elul and Shabbat, we won't blow the shofar until Sunday morning, so maybe you could say, well, I guess we wait until Sunday morning to really begin the high holiday season. And you can see how this gets to be a very tricky question very quickly. In Cincinnati, Ohio, at the Hebrew Union College, it's a tradition of many students to start the high holiday season by going to the annual Slichot service at Wise Temple. Slichot, which is observed on the final Saturday night after Havdalah and often very late at night before Rosh Hashanah, is a series of liturgies which capture the penitent nature of the high holidays. And so while the excitement of blowing shofar during Elul captures the energy and potential for the new year, Slichot is a reminder that this is also a really serious thing. This is the day of judgment, and that all living things should be making themselves ready for the grand choreography of the soul, which we manifest on these special days. And at Wise Temple, where our very own Rabbi Zachary Goodman is now the associate rabbi, the choreography is on full display on Slichot evening in the historic downtown Cincinnati synagogue that opens its doors no earlier than 10:15 at night. The Moorish building, there's only 2, 3, 4 active synagogues in this style left in the entire world, is normally awash in bright colors, thousands of glimmering bulbs and chandeliers that hang from its historic halls. But on Slichot, it is dimmed down to a single spotlight on the bima, the light of the Ner Tamid and the flickering, almost gaslight, of the few necessary fixtures. in the dark, witnessing the light, the congregation holds a quiet, meditative, and beautiful service. And then they watch as the Torah covers are changed to pure white. Those immaculate white Torah covers are one of the images that I personally think of the most when I think of the High Holidays. And while there are no stringent rabbinic opinions that the High Holy Days start that late, I do think that a lot of people say, well, it's not really the Holy Days until I see them, which for me is kind of akin to growing up in Colorado. It really wasn't winter until you saw the first snow. It didn't matter how cold it had been. It didn't matter what time of year it was or how big and puffy the jacket. Snow marks the beginning of winter. And similarly, those white Torah covers mark the beginning of the High Holidays. Now, my parents are here this evening, so they can attest to this one, a very different standard, a much less traditional standard of how I personally knew that the High Holy Days were ready, or were coming. It's because our pickles were ready. Growing up, I can remember going over to my grandparents' home and finding piles of mason jars and pickling spices and, of course, a bathtub and a half full of cucumbers. And earlier in the year, our family would gather, and some of us would be a little more reticent about it than others, I will admit, to slice and to fill and to brine and to season what felt like thousands of jars of pickles. And months later, it would finally be time to open the pickles. And I can still remember when the jars were especially spicy or salty, that some of the pickles would hollow themselves out. The middles would dissolve from how intense the spice was. And my sisters and I would dare each other to eat these particularly potent pickles around the family table, both before and after Rosh Hashanah meals. And you know how smell and taste and memory are deeply tied together. And so when I catch a whiff of brine or cucumber or dill, there are occasions when I find myself transported back to Rosh Hashanah. There are other measuring sticks for the holy days, of course. Here at Holy Blossom, for instance, I'm told that a major part of the feeling of the High Holy Days is when tickets are picked up or they arrive in the mail. Meanwhile, for those of us who are Jewish professionals, the planning for the High Holidays could start as early as May. And for rabbis, the sermon writing process could have begun anywhere from a few weeks ago to a few months ago to soon. A literal response from many Jews on when do the High Holidays begins is on Rosh Hashanah. And one particularly cheeky congregant I once heard in West Virginia was, "Rabbi, for us, it's only the holidays when you start talking about them." And they certainly were not wrong. Some people's holidays will absolutely start on Erev Rosh Hashanah, when for the first time in many months or even years, a person remembers that it's time to come home to synagogue. So let me then refine that question that I opened with this evening and ask then, what and when does the season of the soul begin? Are there dates for the season of the soul, the season of repentance and forgiveness? Do we have a limited time span that ends on Yom Kippur? Our Machzor says, the gates begin to close. So when do they open? And when do they close? And while living in Jerusalem, I learned that this is actually the trick question. Let's go very small for a moment and say that the season of the soul is exactly Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur and the 10 days in between. 10 to 13 days maximum, that is it. No, not really. Because we have to include Slichot. And then at the end, well, it turns out that during Sukkot, if there's no rain, the gates stay open a little while longer because we might have to fast, and that's a penitent fast, and that's part of God hearing our prayers and part of our tshuva. So clearly the gates aren't closed yet if we can still fast. So is the time period 1 week before Rosh Hashanah through Sukkot? No, because there's Elul, and there's Tisha B'Av, and all those other things I mentioned. So let's be generous then and say, okay, it's going to be Tisha B'Av to Sukkot. Well, no, hold on a moment. There's also the 3 weeks that lead up to Tisha B'Av. And so now, if you've been keeping very careful track, we are talking around 4 months, give or take, of high holiday season. And then here comes the real kicker. Slach lanu gavinu ki chatanu, which is, forgive us, Avinu, we have sinned, words that some Jews say up to 3 times every single day during the Amidah, the Shemona Esrei, the 18 benedictions. So how can the gates possibly be opening or ever closing if every single day we have the opportunity to offer up a prayer for forgiveness? Rabbi Dr. Dalia Marks of the Hebrew Union College tells us, imagine it as a spiral. It is tightly wound in the center. And in that tight winding right there in the middle, those are the 13 days, Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur. And circle out just a little bit further, and you'll find the rest of the holiday season. And a little further out to the outliers of the holiday calendar. And then, as it widens and loops even further, to the daily prayers. The spiral, she says, is a chart which marks forgiveness through time and life and prayer itself. There is no moment when the gates open or close. There are only moments when the tightness of the spiral becomes dense and when the tightness of the spiral becomes broad. And should you miss the moment, that's the beautiful thing about a spiral. All you have to do is turn one way or the other, and you'll find yourself at the spot you need once again. As our Holy Blossom community enters into this season, a season that we can argue that we actually never really left, I would encourage you to begin the work and the preparations for the High Holy Days. Our clergy and educators will, starting, I believe, on Monday, be teaching a daily class throughout Elul that you can join digitally. I know that I'm not alone in having plenty of book recommendations for this time of year. And there are multiple online resources you can take advantage of. And if you're feeling meditative, you can join your fellow congregants and Toronto Jewish community at Camp Ramah in a few weeks for a spirituality retreat. Or come hear the shofar be blown almost every single morning here at Minyan, starting this Sunday. Whatever your preparations are, I hope you find them to be deeply meaningful. Because tricky question or not, nobody can deny the answer that actually the High Holy Days are here. Shabbat Shalom. We begin the conclusion of our service with the words of Aleinu. Please turn to page 139 and rise.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצא וראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
Please be seated, if only for a moment. We turn now to Kaddish Yatom, the mourner's Kaddish, and I invite our mourners to rise in their place so that your synagogue community can acknowledge you, support you, and be with you. Today we mark the yahrzeits of the following: Harry Aaron, Jonathan Agar, George Altman, William Anshan, Rebecca Aaron, Carl Bardikoff, Bella Bendayan, Jacob Brill, Susan Burton, Sam Carson, Valerie Fine, Louis Florence, Harry Fogler, Carl Frankel, Bertie Freems, Abraham Goldberg, Frida Granatstein, Rose Kirsch, Vera Klawensky, Sylvia Lawrence, Isidore Levitt, Elisa Lyons. Ethel Newman, Leon Offman, Albert Rose, Ruth Rose, Elizabeth Rubin, Matthew Sapira, Samuel Schneiderman, Edith Schwartz, Jack Shane, Irving Shendroff, William Schuchat, Goldie Silver, Bessie Slivovitz, Joseph Soren, John Spiegler, Albert Starkman, Ruth Sterling, Mary Stutz, Nathan Teichenblatt, Libby Zivat. And we recall as well the lives of those who have ended in recent days and whose families are in the period of Shloshim. Clarence Blatt, Barbara Cass Mansfield, Richard Cole, Lily Cinnamon, Eva Dykstein, Ned Goodman, Tanny Caden, Clara Stekovic. Are there more names to add to our remembrance tonight? As one community, we recite Kaddish Yatom, and I invite us to rise. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shmei Rabbah, be'alma divrach yiruteh v'yamlich malchuteh, b'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'vizman kariv imru, amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach leolam u'lomei amaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, V'yitadar, v'yitaleh, v'yitalal, shmed kudesha, brichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tush b'chata v'nechmata, damiran be'alma v'imru, amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shmaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru, amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru, amen. May the source of peace and peace to all who mourn, comfort to all who are bereaved, and together we say, Amen.
Ose shalom b'mramav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'himeru, amen.
We are honored to have Aidan Donahue and his family and friends and guests with us this evening. Aidan will become bar mitzvah tomorrow morning at services. Please join us here. I like the waistcoat, you look sharp, to lead us in Kiddush and Motzi.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafel.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho be'ava uvratzon hinchilanu zikaron le'maseh bereshit Ki hu yom tehila lemikra kodesh zecher l'tziat mitzrayim ki vanu v'charta v'otanu kidasha mikol ha'amim v'shabbat kodshecha Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh Shabbat.
Take a sip.
Amen. That is not the wine that's going to start you on a life of drinking.
I sure hope.
No, don't go anywhere.
Oh,
I need your help.
Stay here?
Yeah. Ooh, what a nice
Wow.
What a beautiful challah.
Wow.
Would you lead us in the motzi, sir?
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu
melech haolam, ha'motzi lechem min haaretz v'te'avo.
Peace.
Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, Shabbat shalom. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom.
Thank you for joining us this evening.
Just tear it.
Just grab it. It's for you.
Cool.
Enjoy.
I'm so sorry.
No, don't worry about it. It's all good. All good.
I saw a segue and I was like, oh.
No, all good. All good. Don't worry about it.
Thank you so much. Please, it's a bad knife tonight. Yeah.
That is not a real knife. It's not a real knife. It's not a knife. That's
No,
a cut.
there's no